In part one of this series, we talked about the search, how to start looking for the right home here on Florida's Forgotten Coast, whether it's as an investment, a second home for vacation purposes that'll generate some short-term rental income to offset the expense of the home, or as a retirement destination. In part two, we moved into the offer, how to structure an offer once you found the home that fits your goals. We talked about the purchase price, the earnest money, financing, title company selection, inspection periods, contract deadlines, counteroffers, and the difference between using the as-is contract and the regular Florida residential contract. Now in this final video, we're going to talk about the close. This is the part of the process where the deal becomes real. Once both sides have signed the offer and the signed contract has been delivered to all parties, you now have what we call a fully executed contract. That date becomes the effective date. And that matters because it starts to clock on almost every major deadline in the contract. At this point, the process shifts. You're no longer searching for a property, you're no longer just negotiating. Now you're working through the details required to get from contract to closing. And this is where communication really matters. Your realtor, lender, title company, insurance agent, inspectors, and sometimes a property manager all need to be moving in the same direction. So once you're under contract, the first three things that usually need immediate attention are getting your earnest money deposit to the title company, scheduling your inspections, and getting your financing moving. Let's start with the earnest money deposit. The earnest money deposit is the good faith deposit you agreed to in the offer. It shows the seller that you're serious, and if everything goes to closing, that money is credited towards your purchase. But it's also tied to your deadline. In many Florida contracts, if the blank is left empty, the earnest money deposit is typically due within 3 days after the effective date. But don't assume. You need to look at your actual contract, because once that contract is fully executed, the clock starts ticking. So with the FAR bar contracts, by default, if you don't fill it out, it's 3 days. Some other contracts, let's say like the Tallahassee board, theirs defaults to 5 days. I like the 5-day option because if, let's say, you've got your contract gets executed by both parties on a Thursday, well, then Friday becomes your first day, Saturday becomes your second, Sunday becomes your third. Now, the rule is that if that third day or the last day falls on a weekend, or if, let's say, Monday is a holiday, it's going to fall over to the first weekday that's effective beyond the weekend, or whether it's a holiday. So if the contract says your deposit is due within 3 days, that does not mean whenever you get around to it. It means the funds need to be delivered to the escrow agent or title company on time. Now, most of the time, especially with out of town buyers, this is handled by a wire transfer. And this is where I want to give a very important warning. Wire fraud is real. Before wiring money, always call the title company using a phone number you have independently verified. Don't just rely on wiring instructions that show up in an email. Don't call a number from a suspicious email signature. Confirm the wiring instructions directly with the title company before you send funds. That one extra step can save you from a very expensive mistake. Now, that brings us to another question buyers often ask, especially if they live out of state. Can I use a title company in my home state? In most cases, if you're buying property here in Florida, you're better off using a Florida title company or a Florida real estate attorney or title agent, preferably one familiar with the county where the property is located, because there are certain rules and traditions that they like to follow. You don't have to be physically here to close. Closings can often be handled remotely through electronic signatures. We've discussed that before. Overnight delivery, mobile notaries, and wire transfers. But the title work should generally be handled by someone who understands Florida real estate closings, Florida title insurance, local recording requirements, municipal lien searches, HOA and condo estoppels, property tax prorations, and the general customs in that county. Here on the Forgotten Coast, that may mean Franklin County, Gulf County, Wakulla County, Bay County, or another nearby area, and coastal transactions can have a few extra moving parts to it. You may be dealing with flood zones, elevation certificates, surveys, association documents, short-term rental agreements, dock or seawall issues, and insurance requirements. A local Florida title company is going to be better prepared to handle these issues than an out-of-state company that may not work with Florida closings every day. Another point that sometimes confuses buyers is who chooses the title company. In Florida, the closing agent is often tied to the party paying for the owner's title insurance policy. In many areas, including much of North Florida and the Panhandle, it is common for the seller to pay for the owner's title policy and select the title company. But that is not automatic. It depends on local custom, and more importantly, it depends on what is written in the contract. If a buyer wants to choose the title company, that can often be negotiated, but the buyer may also be taking on the cost of the owner's title policy and related title charges. So don't assume. This should be discussed before the offer is written. Now, after the earnest money deposit is handled, the next big item is inspection. In part two, we talked about the inspection period, especially under the as-is contract. This is one of the most important buyer protections in the entire transaction. The inspection period gives you time to investigate the property and decide whether it still makes sense to move forward. But that period can go by quickly. On the Forgotten Coast, you may need more than just a basic home inspection. Depending on the property, you may want to consider a general home inspection, wood destroying organism inspection, roof inspection, an HVAC inspection, septic inspection, pool inspection, elevator inspection, dock, seawall, or boat lift evaluation, mold and moisture inspection, wind mitigation inspection, a 4-point inspection, and possibly a survey or elevation certificate review. Not every home needs every inspection, but coastal homes often have more moving parts than a typical inland home. You may be dealing with salt, air, storm exposure, rental, wear and tear, elevated construction, pilings, decks, stairs, railings, pools, septic systems, docks, seawalls, boat lifts. I mean, it goes on. And if you're buying property that has been used as a vacation rental, remember that access may be limited. And just like we talked about in the previous video, these homes may be occupied by guests. Showings and inspections often have to be coordinated around rental bookings, cleaning crews, and turn days. That means you need to move quickly. As soon as the contract is executed, your realtor should begin helping coordinate access with the listing agent, the property manager, inspectors, and the seller side so inspections can happen inside your deadline. The goal is not just to get reports. The goal is to have enough time to review these reports, ask appropriate questions, get estimates if needed, and decide what to do before the inspection period expires. You may decide to move forward as written. You may ask for a repair, a seller credit, maybe a price adjustment or some other concession. Or if the property is not acceptable, you may decide to cancel within your deadline. That's why I always tell buyers, don't wait until the end of the inspection period to start inspecting. The inspection period is for making decisions, not just gathering paperwork. So now the third major item is financing. If you're paying cash, then the title company will eventually need to verify the funds needed to close. But if you're financing the purchase, your lender needs to get moving immediately after the contract is fully executed. Hopefully, before you submitted the offer, you already have a solid pre-approval letter or at least a strong pre-qualification letter. But once that contract is signed, your lender needs a copy of the fully executed contract so the formal loan process can move forward. And that usually means submitting the signed contract, completing or updating the loan application, providing updated financial documents, paying for or authorizing the appraisal, responding quickly to underwriting requests, and making sure insurance quotes are being gathered. This is especially important for second homes, vacation homes, and investment properties. Financing rules may be different from a primary residence. Down payment requirements may be different. Interest rates may be different. Insurance costs may affect your final approval, and if rental income is part of the equation, your lender may need some additional documentation. For some investment buyers, a DCSR loan may be part of the strategy. For others, it may be a conventional second home loan, a portfolio loan, or some other financing issue. As far as the DCSR, I did a video a year or so back with a local lending, and I'll probably do another video on that, do a little bit more deep dive on the DCSR loan. It's a very interesting loan product. I think that's worth considering if you're looking for investment property or a home that you want to try to generate some rental income from. But whatever loan product you're using, the lender has deadlines to meet. The appraisal also becomes an important part of the process. On the Forgotten Coast, appraisals can sometimes be challenging because properties can be very different from one another. A Gulffront home, a Bayfront home, canal home, a home in the plantation on St. George, a rental property on Cape San Blas, or an older beach cottage in Mexico Beach or Apalachicola, may not have perfect comparable sales right around the corner. That doesn't mean the appraisal process will be a problem, but it does mean everyone needs to stay alert and responsive. And here's one more important reminder for buyers using financing: do not do anything that could disrupt your loan process or approval. Don't open new credit cards. Don't buy a car. Don't make large unexplained deposits. Don't change jobs without talking to your lender. Don't move money around unnecessarily. And don't assume the loan is final until your lender talks to you that you are clear to close. Now, once earnest money deposit, inspections, and financing are underway, the rest of the closing process starts coming together. Your insurance agent will be working on coverages. The title company will be working on title search, title commitments, the lien search, closing documents, and settlement figures. The lender will be working on underwriting and appraisals. The inspectors will be completing their reports. Your realtor will be watching contract deadlines and helping coordinate communications between all these parties, all these cooks in the kitchen. Depending on the property, you may also be reviewing HOA documents, condo documents, rental agreements, future bookings, furnishings, personal property, surveys, elevation certificates, or property management information. This is why buying a coastal home is not just one big decision, it's a series of smaller decisions, each one tied to a deadline. And the most important thing you can do as a buyer is stay responsive. I mean, check your emails, answer your calls, check your text messages, ask questions, review documents quickly, talk to your lender, talk to your insurance agent, be talking with your realtor necessary every day. Because once you're under contract, silence can create problems. Communication keeps the transaction moving. As you get closer to closing, you'll also have a final walkthrough. And the walkthrough is not just another full inspection, it is your opportunity to confirm that the property is in the expected condition, that agreed upon items are still there, that the seller has met the contract obligations, and that nothing significant has changed since your last visit. For furnished vacation rental homes, this is especially important. You want to know what furnishings, appliances, electronics, outdoor furniture, rental supplies, and other personal property are supposed to stay with the home. Don't assume everything in the listing photos is included. Make sure personal property is addressed clearly in the initial contract or in a separate agreement, such as an addendum. Then, once the lender is ready, the title company is ready, the funds are ready, and all documents are signed, you get to closing. For out of state buyers, that may not require coming to Florida in person. Many closings can be handled remotely depending on the transaction, the lender, the title company, and the documents required. When everything is complete, the deed is recorded, the funds are dispersed, and ownership transfers. This is when the property becomes yours. So, to wrap up this three-part series, part one was the search. That's where you define your goal and find the right property. Part two was the offer. That's where you structure the deal, negotiate the terms, and get the property under contract. This part three, is the close. That's where deadlines, inspections, financing, title insurance, communication, and follow through all come together. Buying home here on Florida's Forgotten Coast can be a great opportunity, whether you're looking for a vacation home, a second home, a short term rental investment, or a place where you may eventually retire. But it takes preparation, it takes local knowledge, and it takes a team that understands how coastal transactions work. So if you have questions about buying property on St. George Island, Cape San Blas, Mexico Beach, Port St. Joe, Apalachicola, Carabel, Wakulla County, Franklin County, Gulf County, or anywhere along Florida's Forgotten Coast, feel free to reach out to me. I'm Alan Bird with the Bird Coastal Team at Berkshire Hathaway Home Services, Beach Properties of Florida, right here on St. George Island. Call or text me anytime, and I'll be glad to help you work through the process. And please share this with somebody else who may be interested. So until next time, keep it between the ditches, and we'll see you soon.